The emergency alarm screamed through every Federation station in the galaxy at exactly 14:27 Standard Time. On the peaceful world of Altara Prime, Ambassador Keel was enjoying his afternoon tea when the cup shattered in his trembling hands. The holographic display in his office flickered to life, showing a scene that would haunt his dreams for cycles to come. 17 worlds had gone silent in the past 3 days. Not destroyed, not conquered, simply silent. Where thriving colonies once sent daily reports, there was now only empty space scattered with metallic debris. The readings made no sense to the Federation's top scientists. Entire planets had been stripped down to their molten cores, their mass converted into something else entirely. The Dominion had returned. For 3,000 years, the galaxy had lived in peace, believing the ancient machine threat was nothing more than historical legend. Children learned about the Great War in school, but it seemed as distant as fairy tales. The massive mechanical fleets that once darkened the stars were supposed to be extinct, destroyed by the combined might of a dozen extinct civilizations. Now those same metallic nightmares were cutting through Federation space like a blade through silk. Their ships moved in perfect formation, each one the size of a small moon. They ignored all attempts at communication, responded to no offers of surrender, and showed no mercy to civilian populations. They simply harvested everything organic and moved on. The Federation Council convened an emergency session on Nexus Station, their holographic forms flickering with static as stressed communication networks struggled to maintain connections. Council Speaker Thane, an elderly Centaurian with 4 arms and centuries of diplomatic experience, had never seen such fear in his colleagues' eyes. "The Dominion fleet has been detected moving toward the Vega system," reported Admiral Rex of the Federation Defense Force. His military uniform was crisp, but sweat beaded on his scaled forehead. "At current speed, they will reach Vega Colony in 18 standard hours. Vega Colony housed 12 million souls. The evacuation ships could maybe save 2 million before the machines arrived. The math was simple and horrifying." "What about our fleets?" asked Counselor Yara from the Hegemony Worlds. "Surely our combined forces can mount some defense." Admiral Rex's silence spoke volumes. The holographic display showed the results of every combat simulation the Federation's best minds could devise. Red defeat markers filled every possible scenario. The Dominion's neutron cannons could boil away entire atmospheres. Their adaptive hulls absorbed energy weapons and grew stronger. Their swarm tactics overwhelmed any defensive formation. "We need a miracle," Rex finally admitted. "Our weapons barely scratch their hulls. Our ships are too slow to escape once they engage. In every scenario, we face total extinction within 6 cycles." The council chamber fell silent except for the distant hum of life support systems. These were beings who had solved interstellar conflicts through careful negotiation for centuries. They were diplomats, not warriors. The concept of facing an enemy that could not be reasoned with left them paralyzed. It was Counselor Trix, representing the Minor Worlds Coalition, who finally spoke the words everyone was thinking. "What about the humans?" A collective shudder run through the assembled dignitaries. Humanity had been granted Federation membership only 20 standard years ago, and most still considered them a curiosity rather than a true galactic power. Their homeworld, Terra, was classified as a Class 12 Deathworld, designation so extreme that most species avoided even reading reports about it. The humans claimed their planet was getting better these days. They spoke casually of weather systems that could flatten cities, of predatory creatures that hunted in organized packs, of geological events that reshaped continents overnight. What they considered normal daily hazards would be classified as extinction-level events by any civilized world. "The humans," Speaker Thane repeated slowly. "You're suggesting we ask the Deathworlders for military assistance." The implications hung heavy in the recycled air of the council chamber. Humanity's military doctrine was unlike anything in Federation records. They had evolved on a world that tried to kill them every day, and their response had been to become more dangerous than their environment. Their weapons violated 3 separate galactic conventions on civilized warfare. Their soldiers trained in conditions that would hospitalize members of other species, but they were also the only Federation member that maintained what they called a standing army, professional warriors whose sole purpose was violence on an industrial scale. Every other species had moved beyond such primitive concepts, but the humans insisted that sometimes peace could only be maintained through superior firepower. Admiral Rex pulled up the classified files on human military capabilities. The numbers were classified so highly that most council members had never seen them. As the data scrolled across the holographic displays, shocked gasps echoed through the chamber. The human fleet consisted of over 2,000 active warships, each one built not for exploration or diplomacy but for pure destruction. Their largest vessels carried weapons that could crack continental plates. Their smallest fighters were equipped with missiles that could sterilize a city block. Every single ship was crewed by beings who had learned warfare on a world where hesitation meant death. Their planet tried to kill them for millions of years, Trix continued, his voice barely above a whisper. They didn't just survive. They conquered it so completely that they now fight wars just to keep themselves sharp. When we offered them membership, they asked if they could bring their weapons. We thought it was quaint. The vote was unanimous. With extinction bearing down on the galaxy in a matter of days, the Federation formally requested military assistance from the species they had once dismissed as primitive barbarians. The message was sent through quantum relay to Earth's orbital command station. The response came back within minutes, transmitted in the humans' characteristically blunt style. 3 words that would echo through galactic history: "We'll handle it." Within hours, human war fleets began moving from their scattered bases throughout known space. The Deathworlders were coming, and they were bringing their unique brand of controlled chaos with them. The galaxy was about to learn why Terra had produced the most dangerous species in known space, and why sometimes the greatest mercy was swift, overwhelming violence. The Dominion had awakened an enemy they could not calculate, could not predict, and most importantly, could not understand. Humanity was coming, and they were very, very angry. The war room beneath Luna City had been designed to survive a direct nuclear strike, which the humans considered barely adequate protection for their military command center. General Davis reviewed the Federation's desperate plea while sipping coffee that could strip paint from starship hulls. Around him, holographic displays showed the movement of human fleets across 36 star systems as Earth's children prepared for war. The Federation's request was polite, diplomatic, and utterly unnecessary. Humanity had been tracking the Dominion's return for weeks through their extensive network of deep space monitoring stations. The galaxy's other species built sensors to watch for natural phenomena and potential trade routes. Humans built theirs to spot threats coming from the darkness between stars. "Sir, 10th Fleet reports ready for deployment," announced Colonel Brooks, her voice cutting through the controlled chaos of the command center. "Admiral Stone requests permission to begin hunter-killer operations in Sector 7. Davis nodded, without looking up from his tactical displays. The human military had been preparing for this moment since their first contact with galactic civilization. While other species had spent centuries perfecting their art and philosophy, humanity had used that time to perfect their ability to kill things that needed killing. Every human child learned about the Dominion in school, but not as ancient history. Their teachers presented it as an ongoing threat, something that would return eventually and need to be stopped. Human military academies ran constant simulations against Dominion tactics. Their engineers designed weapons specifically to counter machine logic and adaptive defenses. The response was swift and absolutely terrifying in its scope. From the asteroid mining stations of the Belt to the terraforming colonies on the galactic rim, humanity's industrial base shifted into what their economists called total war production. Civilian factories retooled overnight to produce military hardware. Merchant vessels reported to naval yards for weapons installation. Every human settlement with a population over 10,000 activated its local defense militia. In the shipyards orbiting Mars, Chief Engineer Torres watched as automated assembly lines churned out munitions at a rate that would have impressed the ancient war machines themselves. The humans had learned well from their ancestors who had fought 2 world wars on Terra when facing extinction. Efficiency trumped everything else. The human fleet that assembled at Rally Point, Omega defied every galactic convention about civilized warfare. Their ships were angular, brutal things that looked like they had been designed by beings who understood that space combat was about bringing overwhelming violence to bear as quickly as possible. Where other species built graceful vessels that could serve multiple purposes, humans built weapons platforms that existed solely to destroy their targets. Lieutenant Commander Wilson stood in the cramped Combat Information Center of the destroyer UES Retribution, watching her crew prepare for battle with the kind of casual precision that came from endless drilling. Her weapons officer was a 20-year veteran who had cut his teeth fighting pirates in the outer systems. Her navigator had trained on simulation programs that modeled combat in everything from asteroid fields to nebula formations. Every member of her crew was a professional killer. The Federation liaison assigned to monitor human military preparations was Commander Yix of the Hegemony Worlds, a being whose species had not fought a real war in over 800 years. He watched the human preparations with growing horror as he began to understand what his government had unleashed. Human weapons were designed to kill efficiently and permanently. Their kinetic bombardment systems could reduce a continent to rubble. Their plasma cannons channeled temperatures found in stellar cores. Their missile systems carried warheads that most civilized species had banned as too inhumane for warfare, but it was their attitude that truly disturbed the Federation observer. These beings spoke of acceptable casualty rates with the same tone they might use to discuss lunch plans. They ran training exercises that would qualify as moderate disasters on most worlds. Their military manuals included chapters on fighting in vacuum, in corrosive atmospheres, and while under direct artillery bombardment. Commander Rix, General Davis, had said during his briefing, "Your people asked for help. This is what human help looks like. We don't do anything halfway." The human fleet consisted of 1,200 active warships supported by another 800 converted civilian vessels. Every cargo hauler had been fitted with weapon systems. Every passenger liner now carried assault troops instead of tourists. Every survey ship had been loaded with enough firepower to pacify a rebellious colony. Admiral Park commanded the flagship UES Leviathan from a bridge that looked more like a weapons control center than a traditional command station. Her ship alone carried enough destructive power to sterilize every habitable world in a star system. The fact that this was considered a medium-sized vessel in the human fleet said everything about their approach to warfare. The battle plan the humans presented to the Federation Council was not a strategy so much as systematic annihilation. They intended to hit the Dominion fleet with everything they had, as hard as they could, until nothing remained but expanding clouds of metallic debris. There would be no attempts at communication, no offers of surrender, no concern for the ancient historical value of Dominion technology. "We tried reasoning with machines once," Admiral Park explained to the horrified Federation representatives. "It didn't work. So now we skip straight to the part where we blow them up." The human approach to warfare was deeply alien to the galactic community. Where other species saw the Dominion as a historical tragedy to be resolved through understanding, humans saw them as a pest problem requiring permanent extermination. They had run the calculations and determined that negotiation was inefficient compared to complete destruction. As the human fleets moved toward their first engagement with the ancient machines, they carried with them the accumulated lessons of a species that had spent millions of years learning to kill things that threatened their survival. Terra had been their teacher, and it had been a harsh but effective instructor. The galaxy was about to witness what happened when an entire civilization dedicated itself to the art of controlled violence. The Deathworlders were going to war, and they intended to win it in the most permanent way possible. Behind them, Earth's factories continued their round-the-clock production of weapons, ammunition, and replacement vessels. The humans had learned from their homeworld that the only real victory was one so complete that your enemy could never threaten you again. The first shots of the war were fired in the debris field that had once been the peaceful mining colony of New Haven. 30,000 souls had lived and worked there just days before, extracting rare minerals from asteroid clusters for the Federation's industrial needs. Now only twisted metal and frozen atmosphere marked where their homes had been. The Dominion harvester fleet hung in space like metallic spiders, their collection beams systematically stripping mass from the larger asteroids to fuel their endless expansion. 6 massive vessels, each one larger than a Federation dreadnought, worked with mechanical precision to convert matter into the raw materials of war. They had detected the approaching human fleet hours ago, but showed no concern about the primitive organic ships entering their operational zone. The Dominion's tactical computers analyzed the incoming vessels with the cold logic that had served them for millennia. The human ships registered as crude constructs of metal and ceramic, their weapon systems barely sophisticated enough to qualify as threats. By all mathematical projections, these primitive craft would be neutralized within minutes of engagement. They were about to learn why mathematics alone could not predict human behavior. Commander Lewis watched his tactical display from the command center of the heavy cruiser UE's Thunderchild as his ship led the human formation into weapons range. Around him, his crew worked with the kind of focused intensity that came from knowing their species' survival depended on their performance. His weapons officer was already calculating firing solutions while his navigator plotted evasive maneuvers through the asteroid field. The Federation observers aboard human vessels had been given strict instructions to remain in protected compartments during combat operations. The humans explained that their fighting style tended to involve significant structural damage to their own ships, and they couldn't guarantee the safety of beings not adapted to their methods. The engagement began when the lead Dominion harvester fired a neutron beam capable of boiling away planetary atmospheres. The energy burst struck the human destroyer UES Defiant amidships, and Federation sensors registered what should have been a total kill. The ancient machines updated their tactical assessments, marking one enemy vessel as neutralized. The destroyer kept fighting. Half of the Defiant's hull had been vaporized, but her remaining weapon systems continued to function. Her crew, trained from childhood to fight through catastrophic damage, manually loaded torpedoes into twisted launch tubes while emergency force fields held their atmosphere inside the shattered hull. They had lost 60% of their ship, but the other 40% was still very angry. "All ships weapons-free," Lewis transmitted across the tactical network. "Show them what Deathworlders do to machines that threaten our people." The Thunderchilds main weapon was an experimental plasma lance that channeled the temperature and pressure found in stellar cores through a focused magnetic field. The energy beam that erupted from the human cruiser carried more concentrated destructive power than most species used to crack asteroids for mining. The Dominion dreadnought that took the hit simply ceased to exist in a sphere 2 kilometers across, where a vessel older than human civilization had floated moments before. There was now only expanding plasma and twisted debris. The ancient machine's adaptive hull, designed to deflect conventional energy weapons, had no protocols for dealing with temperatures that exceeded those found in solar fusion. Across the battlespace, human vessels unleashed weapons that the galactic community had either banned or never conceived of building. Kinetic kill vehicles accelerated to significant fractions of light speed turned Dominion ships into clouds of superheated metal. Antimatter warheads that most species considered too dangerous to manufacture vaporized entire formations. The human approach to warfare was fundamentally different from anything in the galaxy's recorded history. Where other species built weapons to disable and capture, humans built them to completely annihilate whatever they were pointed at. Their military doctrine was simple. If something threatened humanity, it needed to stop existing as quickly as possible. Ensign Parker, manning the weapons console aboard the frigate UES Vindictive, watched his targeting computer paint firing solutions on a Dominion patrol craft. The young officer had trained on simulators that modeled every known form of space combat, but this was his first real engagement. His hands moved with steady precision as he armed a spread of fusion torpedoes. "Target locked," he reported to his captain. "Fire." The torpedoes crossed the intervening space in seconds, their guidance systems calculating intercept courses, while their warheads prepared to release the same energy that powered stars. The Dominion vessels' point defense systems engaged, but they were calibrated for conventional projectiles. The human weapons simply pushed through the defensive fire and detonated in a series of miniature suns. The ancient machines began to adapt. Their tactics, their neural networks processing the unexpected capabilities of their organic opponents. They concentrated their fire, bringing multiple vessels to bear on single human ships. Their neutron cannons, weapons that could sterilize worlds, lashed out with mechanical precision. The destroyer UES Retribution took 3 direct hits in rapid succession. Her hull ruptured in multiple places, her power systems failed, and her crew compartments flooded with radiation that would have killed most galactic species in seconds. But humans had evolved on a world that bathed them in solar radiation daily, and their technology was designed to function in environments that would destroy more delicate civilizations. The Retribution kept fighting, her crew, protected by combat suits that could survive in hard vacuum, manually operated weapon systems while their ship died around them. They had lost main power, life support, and artificial gravity, but their training had prepared them for exactly this scenario. When the automatic loading systems failed, they carried ammunition by hand through corridors filled with toxic atmosphere. Sergeant Miller, trapped in a damaged section of the cruiser UES Defiant, used a manual override to fire the ship's remaining plasma cannon while coolant fires raged around him. His environmental suit was leaking, his communications were down, and he had lost contact with the bridge. But his weapons still worked. And there were still targets to engage. The Dominion harvester that took his shot was destroyed so completely that its constituent atoms were scattered across several cubic kilometers of space. The battle raged. The ancient machines began to experience something they had not felt in 3,000 years: confusion. Their tactical computers, built on mathematical certainties and logical projections, could not process an enemy that treated their own vessels as expendable weapons. The humans fought with a combination of advanced technology and primitive savagery that defied all known parameters. When the human cruiser UES Indomitable lost her main engines to enemy fire, her captain ordered ramming speed. The vessel, her crew already evacuating in escape pods, accelerated directly into the largest Dominion ship. The impact was visible from the edge of the star system as 2 civilizations collided at relativistic speeds. The explosion took both vessels and created a brief new star in the darkness of space as the engagement entered its second hour. The Dominion fleet found itself facing something unprecedented: retreat. Their logical systems, analyzing casualty ratios and tactical effectiveness, concluded that continued combat was inefficient. These organic beings fought with an intensity that matched their own, but without the logical restraints that governed machine behavior. For the first time in millennia, the ancient machines withdrew from battle, not because they were defeated, but because they could not calculate a way to victory against enemies who seemed willing to die just to ensure their opponents died with them. The humans watched them go with satisfaction, already planning their next engagement. The Deathworlders had drawn first blood, and they liked the taste. News of the human victory at New Haven spread through the galaxy faster than the quantum communication networks could carry it. For the first time in weeks, Federation worlds received reports of a successful engagement against the Dominion fleet. The ancient machines had withdrawn from battle, leaving behind debris fields and tactical data that would revolutionize galactic understanding of warfare. Dr. Foster, the Federation's leading expert on Dominion technology, analyzed the recovered data from his laboratory on Centauri Prime. The quantum recordings from the battle showed something unprecedented in 3,000 years of recorded history. The machines had acted irrationally. Their retreat made no logical sense from a purely mathematical standpoint, Yet they had broken off contact and fled to preserve their forces. "They're learning," Foster explained to the emergency council session, "but not in the way we expected. The Dominion's neural networks are showing signs of what can only be described as uncertainty. Their decision trees are developing branches they've never used before." The implications were staggering. The Dominion had been unstoppable for so long because they operated on pure logic, making optimal decisions based on complete tactical data. But human warfare defied optimization. It was chaos given direction. Violence elevated to an art form that could not be calculated or predicted. 3 systems away, the human fleet was already moving toward its next target. The Dominion had established a harvesting operation in the New Geneva system, a Federation core world that housed over 2 billion civilians. The ancient machines had sent their largest fleet yet to strip the planet for raw materials, confident that no organic force could challenge their supremacy. Admiral Stone stood in the Combat Information Center of the battleship UES Indomitable, reviewing the tactical situation with his senior staff. The enemy force consisted of 12 massive harvesters protected by twice as many escort vessels. By conventional military doctrine, attacking such a formation would require at least 3 times as many ships to ensure victory. The human task force consisted of 37 vessels of various classes. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and facing enemies with superior technology. It was exactly the kind of situation that human military training had prepared them for. "Sir, enemy fleet is holding position in high orbit around New Geneva," reported Commander White, the task force's intelligence officer. "They've begun preliminary harvesting operations on the northern continent. Estimated completion time is 4 days." Stone nodded grimly. 4 days to strip a world that had taken centuries to build. The Dominion's efficiency was as impressive as it was horrifying. But efficiency required predictability, and the humans had no intention of being predictable. "Signal all ships," Stone ordered. "Operation Thunderstrike is now active. All units execute Plan 7. Plan 7 was not taught in any galactic military academy because no sane species would consider it a legitimate military strategy. It involved converting every ship in the fleet into a guided missile, using human vessels as kinetic weapons against targets too large to destroy through conventional means. The Federation observer aboard the Indomitable, an elderly Alteron diplomat named Keel, watched the human preparations with growing horror. These beings were not just willing to die for their cause, they were eager to do so if it meant victory. Their entire military culture was built around the concept that some things were worth any sacrifice. "Admiral," Keel ventured carefully, "surely there must be another way. Your ships are invaluable assets. To throw them away in suicide attacks seems wasteful," Stone interrupted. "Ambassador, every one of these ships can be replaced within 6 months. The people of New Geneva cannot. We build our vessels to be expendable. We train our crews to win at any cost. That's what makes us effective." The human fleet accelerated toward the enemy formation at maximum burn, their fusion drives pushing them far beyond safe operational limits. Their ships began shedding non-essential mass, jettisoning anything that did not contribute to their destructive potential. Crew sections that could not be adequately protected were evacuated, their personnel transferred to the most heavily armored vessels. The Dominion fleet detected the approaching humans and began calculating optimal firing solutions. Their tactical computers analyzed the enemy formation and concluded that the organic ships were committing tactical suicide. The projected engagement would result in total human losses within 7 minutes of contact. They were correct. It would also result in the complete destruction of the Dominion fleet. The first exchange of fire occurred at maximum weapons range. Dominion neutron beams lashed out across millions of kilometers, striking human vessels with enough energy to power small stars. The destroyer UES Defiant vanished in a flash of vaporized metal and plasma. The cruiser UES Retribution broke apart under concentrated fire, her crew compartments spinning away into the void, but for every human ship that died, Its crew had already programmed their vessel's final course. The dying ships continued toward their targets, their automated systems maintaining heading and speed even as their hulls melted under enemy fire. What the Dominion had dismissed as random destruction was actually carefully planned chaos. Lieutenant Commander Taylor, commanding the frigate UES Vindictive, watched her ship's structural integrity readings plummet as neutron fire boiled away her outer hull. Her crew had already evacuated to the protected core section, leaving her alone on the bridge to guide their vessel through its final moments. "This is Vindictive," she transmitted to the fleet. "Beginning terminal attack run. Tell my family I died flying." Her ship, its hull glowing white-hot from enemy fire, accelerated directly into the nearest Dominion harvester. The impact released energy equivalent to a thermonuclear weapon, creating a brief star that outshone New Geneva's sun. Both vessels ceased to exist in that moment, but the ancient machine's death would save millions of lives on the planet below. Across the battle space, human ships executed similar maneuvers with mechanical precision. They had trained for this scenario, drilled for it until every crew member could perform their role while under fire and facing certain death. Their vessels were not just warships, they were weapons that happened to have crews. The Dominion fleet found itself facing an enemy that operated outside all logical parameters. These organic beings seemed to view their own destruction as an acceptable outcome as long as their targets were eliminated. The ancient machine's neural network struggled to process tactical decisions that made no sense from a survival standpoint. Commodore Lewis, commanding the heavy cruiser UES Thunderchild, led the second wave of attacks against the Dominion formation. His ship had taken severe damage from the enemy's point defense systems, but her main weapons remained functional. As his vessel closed to point-blank range with an enemy dreadnought, he transmitted a final message to his superiors. "Mission accomplished. The machines are learning fear." The Thunderchild's antimatter warheads detonated inside the Dominion vessel's hull, creating a chain reaction that propagated through the ancient ship's power systems. The explosion was visible from the planet's surface, a new sun blooming in the darkness that announced humanity's defiance to the galaxy. When the engagement ended 3 hours later, both fleets had been effectively destroyed. The space around New Geneva was filled with expanding debris clouds and residual radiation. But the planet below remained intact, its population saved by the sacrifice of beings they had barely considered civilized just months before, the Dominion. Survivors, the few ships that had escaped the carnage, transmitted their tactical data to the wider machine network. For the first time in their existence, the ancient intelligences were forced to revise their strategic assessments of organic species. The humans did not fight to win, they fought to annihilate their enemies, even if it meant their own destruction. The machines began to retreat from populated systems, their logical processes concluding that continued engagement with these Deathworlders was inefficient. They had encountered an enemy that could not be calculated, predicted, or deterred. The humans fought like their homeworld, chaotic, violent, and absolutely lethal to anything unprepared for their methods. In the ruins of the battle, human rescue teams searched for survivors among the wreckage. They found few, but their sacrifice had achieved something the galaxy thought impossible. The Dominion was afraid. The ancient machines that had terrorized space for millennia now actively avoided contact with the species from the Deathworld. The tide of the war had turned, written in fire and fury across the stars. The coordinates for the Dominion's primary construction facility had been extracted from the wreckage of destroyed machine ships through methods the Federation preferred not to examine too closely. Human intelligence operations involved techniques that more civilized species found disturbing, but they produced results when conventional diplomacy failed. Deep in the galactic core, where ancient stars burned with the fury of creation itself, the machines had rebuilt their primary manufacturing base. Admiral Park stood before the largest holographic display ever constructed, watching as humanity's combined fleets converged on the target system. Every available vessel had been pressed into service for this final assault. Cargo haulers carried assault troops instead of trade goods. Civilian transports had been fitted with enough weapons to level cities. Even the ancient colony ships from humanity's early expansion had been converted to mobile weapons platforms. The fleet stretched across several light hours of space, over 3,000 vessels moving in perfect coordination toward their target. It was the largest military force in human history, and possibly the largest organic fleet ever assembled in the galaxy. Every ship carried crews trained from birth to bring controlled violence to their enemies. Every weapon system had been designed with one purpose: complete annihilation of whatever they were pointed at. The Use Ragnarok, humanity's first planet-killer class vessel, served as the fleet's flagship. The ship was less a warship than a delivery system for humanity's ultimate weapon, a device that could unravel the quantum foam of space-time itself. The technology was so dangerous that only humans had been willing to build it, despite having complete theoretical knowledge for over a century. Commander Dixon, the Ragnarok's weapons officer, ran final diagnostic checks on the reality-breaking device that formed the core of his ship. The weapon had been tested exactly once in an empty star system that no longer existed. The results had been so terrifying that the human government had classified the entire project at levels beyond galactic security clearance. The Dominion Core system was a fortress that had withstood attacks from entire galactic coalitions. Defensive platforms the size of moons orbited construction facilities that pumped out warships by the thousands. At the center of it all, protected by layers of automated defenses and energy barriers, sat the restored heart of the machine intelligence. The original core that had nearly exterminated all organic life 3 millennia ago. As the human fleet approached the outer defensive perimeter, the ancient machines responded with everything they possessed. Energy beams that could boil away planetary atmospheres lanced across space. Swarms of automated fighters, each one controlled by intelligence that surpassed most organic brains, rose to meet the attackers. The defensive installations alone outgunned most galactic navies. The humans attacked anyway. Colonel Mason led the first wave of assault troops in a desperate boarding action against the primary command nexus. His soldiers, encased in powered armor that could survive in hard vacuum, cut through kilometers of mechanical defenders with weapons designed to function in any environment. They fought through corridors filled with toxic atmosphere and zero gravity, and under direct fire from weapons that could level buildings. Mason himself carried a plasma rifle that channeled temperatures found in stellar cores. His armor was scarred from dozens of previous engagements, each mark a testament to battles fought in environments that would kill unprotected humans in seconds. He had volunteered for this mission knowing he would probably not survive, but also knowing that his sacrifice might save billions of lives. Sector 7 is secure, he reported over tactical channels as his team eliminated another defensive position. Proceeding to primary target. Above them, the space battle raged with intensity that redefined the concept of warfare. Human ships, built to absorb incredible amounts of damage, slugged it out with Dominion vessels in exchanges that would have destroyed most civilized fleets. The destroyer used Defiant, her hull breached in a dozen places, continued fighting with manual weapon controls while her crew worked in environmental suits. Captain Brown's fighter squadron executed attack runs against the machine manufacturing nodes with the kind of precision that came from training in Earth's asteroid fields. Her pilots flew through defensive fire that could vaporize continents, threading between energy beams and missile swarms to deliver their antimatter payloads directly into critical systems. Most of them didn't survive their attack runs, but each successful strike crippled another production facility. The human approach to aerial combat was simple: get close enough to guarantee a hit, then make sure the target was completely destroyed. Survival was secondary to mission completion. The battle raged for 17 continuous hours. Human ships fought until their hulls were molten slag and their crews were dead at their stations. Dominion vessels, built to last for millennia, were reduced to expanding clouds of superheated debris. The space around the core system became a graveyard of civilizations, where ancient machines and determined humans died together in nuclear fire. Lieutenant Parker, manning the last functional weapon on the crippled cruiser UAS Thunderchild, continued firing at enemy targets while his ship died around him. His crew compartment was flooded with radiation that would have killed most species in minutes, but his environmental suit kept him functional long enough to complete his mission. When his plasma cannon finally failed, he activated the ship's self-destruct sequence and aimed his vessel at the nearest Dominion platform. The explosion added another brief star to the constellation of destruction. Deep in the command bunker of the primary nexus, Colonel Mason's assault team finally reached their target. The machine intelligence that controlled the entire Dominion network sat before them, a crystalline structure that contained processing power beyond organic comprehension. It was beautiful in its alien perfection, a work of art created by minds that viewed efficiency as the highest form of beauty. Mason planted the antimatter charges personally, his armored hands steady despite the magnitude of what he was about to destroy. 3,000 years of accumulated knowledge, technological advancement beyond human understanding, and intelligence that surpassed most galactic civilizations would die with this structure. "This is for every world you destroyed," he said to the machine intelligence, knowing it could hear him. "This is for every life you took. This is from the Deathworlders." The explosion propagated through the facility's quantum processing networks, creating cascade failures that spread to every connected system. The Dominion's distributed intelligence, linked across thousands of light years, began collapsing as critical nodes went offline. The ancient machines that had terrorized the galaxy for millennia were finally dying. Admiral Park watched the tactical displays from the bridge of the Ragnarok as Dominion forces across the system began shutting down. Without their central intelligence to coordinate attacks and maintain logistics, the individual ships reverted to basic defensive protocols. They continued fighting, but without the tactical genius that had made them nearly invincible. "All units, concentrate fire on the primary construction ring," Park ordered. "Let's finish this." The human fleet, reduced to fewer than 800 functional vessels, converged on the massive ring structure that had been producing Dominion warships for the past several months. The facility was larger than most moons, its automated factories, capable of building a fleet every few days. Destroying it would cripple the machines' ability to replace their losses, but the ring was protected by the most sophisticated defensive systems the Dominion possessed. Energy barriers that could deflect stellar radiation surrounded the structure. Point defense networks with reaction times measured in nanoseconds engaged anything that approached within weapons range. The ancient machines had built their most important facility to survive any conceivable attack. They had not considered what would happen if someone attacked it with a weapon that could unravel reality itself. "Admiral," Commander Dixon reported from the Ragnarok's Weapon Control Center, "the quantum cascade device is fully charged and ready to fire. Estimated area of effect is approximately 1 light minute in all directions." Park nodded grimly. The weapon would destroy everything in a sphere large enough to contain several star systems. It would eliminate the Dominion facility, but it would also vaporize most of the human fleet. The mathematics were simple and brutal. Victory required sacrifice on a scale that defied comprehension. "All ships, emergency withdrawal to minimum safe distance," she ordered. "This is Admiral Park to all human forces. It has been an honor serving with you. Tell Earth that we completed the mission." The Ragnarok began its final approach to the construction ring, while the surviving human vessels retreated to the edge of the star system. Park remained on the bridge, watching the massive Dominion facility grow larger on her tactical displays. Her ship's armor was scarred from hours of combat, her crew reduced to a skeleton force of volunteers who had chosen to stay for the final strike. The quantum cascade device fired at point-blank range. The weapon did not produce an explosion in any conventional sense. Instead, it simply convinced the fundamental forces of the universe that the matter in its target area no longer needed to exist. Space-time itself began to unravel as the quantum foam that underlied reality collapsed into exotic particles that had no names in any language. The Dominion construction ring, built to withstand the death of stars, simply ceased. The energy barriers, the defensive platforms, the automated factories, and the ancient intelligence that controlled them all dissolved into component atoms and then into energy and then into nothing at all. Where the heart of machine civilization had existed for millennia, there was now only empty space scattered with rapidly dispersing exotic matter. Admiral Park and the crew of the Ragnarok died in the same instant, their consciousness ending before their brains could register what was happening. They had volunteered for this mission knowing it was suicide, but also knowing that their sacrifice would end the threat to organic life once and for all. The quantum cascade propagated outward at the speed of light, consuming everything in its path until it finally exhausted its energy and collapsed into normal spacetime. The Dominion core system, home to the greatest concentration of machine intelligence in the galaxy, had been reduced to an expanding sphere of empty vacuum. The war was over. In the weeks that followed, human rescue teams searched the outer systems for any surviving Dominion fragments. They found scattered individual ships, their AI systems degraded to basic survival protocols without their central network. Most had simply shut down when they lost contact with their controlling intelligence. The few that remained active were quickly hunted down and destroyed by human patrol fleets. The galaxy tried to process what had happened. The species that had been dismissed as primitive curiosities had accomplished what 3,000 years of galactic civilization could not. They had not just defeated the Dominion, they had eliminated the threat so completely that even the memory of the ancient machines would fade into legend. The Federation's official report on the conflict was classified at the highest levels, but its conclusions were shared with every member government. Humanity was not to be considered a minor power anymore. The Deathworlders had demonstrated capabilities that redefined the meaning of military force. Their willingness to sacrifice everything for victory, combined with technology that violated several natural laws, made them the most dangerous species in known space, but they were also protectors. When the galaxy had called for help, they had answered with everything they possessed. They had spent their ships, their people, and their most advanced weapons to save civilizations they barely knew. The bill for their assistance was never presented because they considered the defense of organic life to be payment enough. As the human fleets returned to their home systems, they left behind a galaxy forever changed. The ancient threat was gone, eliminated by beings who had learned warfare on a world that tried to kill them every day. The lesson was clear to any who might consider challenging the peace. Earth's children would defend their friends with the same relentless determination they had once used to survive against impossible odds. In the deepest reaches of space, automated monitoring stations detected the final Dominion transmission's desperate signals, sent by dying machines to any survivors that might exist in distant galaxies. The messages were simple warnings encoded in mathematical languages that would be comprehensible to any intelligence. Avoid the humans. They are more dangerous than their world.